So we're now going to look at Beyond 2020 Vision, and please welcome the panel up to the stage. We've got Daniel Ruiz, Chief Executive of Zenzik, Alistair McMahon, Data and Insights Director at O2, Elizabeth de Jong, Director of UK Policy at Freight Transport Association, and Andrew Hugill, Director of Policy and Technical Affairs at the CIHT. So they're all going to do a little sort of 10-minute chat about one particular element, and then we're going to have a sort of broader chat after that. So Daniel, do you want to start us off?
Right, so the future of mobility laden with myth and conjecture. My job at Zenzik, this is disconcerting, is to coordinate all that. So how can we do that? We have a mandate from government, industry and academia. We are mandated through support from them that is financial and comes in many other guises. So we sit there in the middle orchestrating this music. The first task is to set up an environment in which we can test, develop and experiment with connected and automated mobility. Connected and automated mobility is the labeled focus, but for me it is about the future of mobility. How are we going to move forwards? How are the services going to be provided? How are the vehicles, the infrastructure, all of these going to interact in a way which is constructive and accelerates us through as fast as possible. Currently we have 6 test beds as shown there. 5 are physical, within 3 hours drive of each other. They are physical, but they're a digital twin, so we can look at the virtual and the physical alongside each other. And there is another one called the Convex project, just started, led interestingly enough by Transport for West Midlands, a public authority, but with partners in Bosch and various others, to create a data marketplace. How can we take data, how we can enhance it so that it becomes insights and has value, not just to people that use it, but those that have produced it. So, very complex beast in this thing called Testbed UK. As I say, virtual, physical, controlled, public domain, various environments all coming together very nicely, some of which are already online and being deployed, being used. Why are we striving for CAM? The benefits are shown there. First and foremost, safety and security. That doesn't mean just physical safety, but obviously cyber security, that kind of safety. Productivity, and that again is not just one thing, it's the productivity of the individual and productivity of businesses. And going on to the right, access is about inclusion and diversity and giving people more mobility. Again, that links to productivity. And ultimately, we're talking about economic growth alongside the social benefits. Quite a complex piece. People involved in all of that will have different agendas, different goals. Our challenge is to align those so that we can actually get to the ultimate goal, which of course is mobile nirvana, joy, health, and everything else together. Common goals can be achieved. They will still be different routes. This starts to point at a roadmap or something more like a tool which will help us strategize, help us plan, so that we can converge and get to our route, our destination, as efficiently and risk-free as possible. So this is a tool that has been developed not just for policymakers, not just for investors, but both, and not just for the end consumer. And how does it do it? It produces a collaborative view. We have over 150 organizations, I should say, more than double that number of people, collaborating, trying to achieve some consensus, a shared vision. That, as I say, de-risks everything, building on the insights that each of those organizations, those individuals bring. How did it manifest itself? There is an interactive report, so you can go online and look at it. It is free of charge. It's in a thing called Smart Cloud. It is extremely accessible. You can ping around and actually find your way through it if you have the patience. I'll come back to that in a second. There is a report which describes how you can work your way through it, how it's been built up, where it's got credibility, where that credibility comes from. But more to the point, what does it actually mean and how will you benefit from it? There's obviously an overview which is more accessible, and you can get copies of that on the Zenzik stand today, which is just next to the Transport Scotland stand for convenience. But there are also going to be workshops where we can look at your demands, your needs, the needs of your business, your organisation, and how can that be looked at? How can we create your strategy, whether you are an individual, an organisation, or a cluster of organisations that are collaborating? How was it created? This is starting to prove the credibility of this thing. You may be interested to know it's already been translated into Japanese. We know that in Michigan they're using it to kind of develop their approach to deployment of connected and automated mobility, and many other countries are picking up on it as well. So that's in addition to the 150 organisations that have already contributed in the UK. And what that's generated, 500 milestones, over 600 interconnections between those milestones that come out and help us weave our way through the whole thing. Further evidence, diversity of organisations. So it's not 150 people from transport planning. It is far broader than that, and it's not just transport, it's not just vehicles, it's not just mobility, it's a societal thing. If you needed more evidence, there you are. So what is the vision that it's based around? You may not be able to read that, you're not necessarily supposed to, but look at the central circle. That is the end product of the discussion between those 150 organisations. It also draws on what the government has done in terms of its urban mobility principles and what the Centre of Connected and Automated Vehicles is wrapping its work around, which is very simple and easy to read. So safety and security is number one, top of the list. Then productivity, as I've said, which is about personal productivity as well as organisational and business, and then access to transport or inclusivity. That's where we're taking us, and we want to do it in the UK because we need to be doing it ourselves, otherwise we'll end up buying it. Interestingly enough, this roadmap, when we first went through it, ended up delivering that vision in 2079, which was a tad too late. So we've wound it back, and by assuming that there will be interventions and investments by organisations involved in this whole piece at appropriate times, you can actually come back to a realistic time frame, which is 2030. That is safe as long as you persist in keeping the whole picture in mind. Someone said this morning, think bigger than what you're trying to achieve, otherwise you won't achieve it. So the thinking bigger is making sure that you are including society and people, the legislative aspects, regulatory, the insurance, the human factors, as well as the vehicles, as well as the infrastructure, which is fundamental to getting us to where we want to be in this transition phase, and of course the services that come out the other end. That's what it looks like in overview. It's very simple. I am not totally happy with this diagram because it makes it look like a left to right linear plan. It is far more than that. It's interwoven with things that are going on that cross-cut the themes that you can see down the left-hand side and the subsidiary streams that you can see just next to them. Within that, of course, there is infrastructure, there is freight, and we need to be looking at the case study, the scenarios that mean something to businesses and groups of business. So I was already talking to Elizabeth de Jong earlier on about how we can look at the freight and logistics challenge and see how that can be drawn through here. What's key is you realise that under the bonnet there is a phenomenal amount of information, which means that as a freight organisation you can pick and say, well, what's my dependence on legislation? What's my dependence on human factors research, and so on. So what it says for me, as I say, it has to be speaking to the whole of society. It has to be speaking to government and industry and the consumer. So it does. And I've mentioned golden threads. These are a bespoke few. They're a way of kind of weaving your way through it, depending on what your needs are, and they are driven by those interdependencies within it. If you look in the report online, or get a copy from us, 30 quid on Amazon, then it will say that there are already 6 golden threads that we've majored on and fleshed out. And they are inevitably those that we think are most important. The critical path ones, for example, are safety, are cybersecurity, public acceptability. If we don't have acceptance or awareness, we'll never get adoption. But that is also going to be dependent on cybersecurity and the confidence and the trust in these systems. That's what a golden thread looks like in conceptual form. What it really says is that if I have a product that I want to get to market by, say, 2027, what are the things that I can do to get there as rapidly as possible? But more to the point, what am I dependent on and what can others be doing? And who do I need to interact with? Who do I need to influence in order to make sure that my objectives are achieved? Now, if I can see on here that their objectives, they are due to deliver that thing or they aspire to deliver that thing, then it's more likely to happen, therefore risk drops. But I need to encourage them and give them purpose by helping me with my purpose. That's what it looks like in the report. Just to scare you a tiny bit, I realise it's a bit like a scientist showing some equations, and I'm an engineer. I used to find that hilarious whenever an equation would come on the slide, because of course you can never actually use it in the audience. But what this does say in reality is that this is real. This is not a smoke and mirrors superficial piece of work. There is real depth in there. come to the stand in the far corner, Zenzik, and there are some people there that can talk you through it with real authority, talk about your challenges and how you might find your way through it, what it really means. Which brings me to two last things. Real work that is done, real milestones completed. The UK is the best place in the world to be testing at the moment, because amongst other things, we have excellent legislation, excellent codes of practice, and the safety framework, which is shown here, is a piece of work which shows how you can come to the UK, or work in the UK if you're already here, and weave your way through the various testing facilities without having to renew a safety case each time. There's a standard approach being taken by a large number of organisations, even though they are, on the face of it, competitors. And that's also reflected in the geodata, where we're working to standards which, again, make things simpler so that we can achieve our goals. You can get it at zenzik.io/roadmap, and I recommend it to you. I hope you enjoy reading it. Thank you very much.